Hi, Brandon Parsons with Level Up Improvement. Today I want to talk to you about windows really quick. So when it comes to vinyl windows, you could take a builder's grade window and set it next to a really nice window, and from the outside they look about the same. It's all the details inside that make up the big difference, and it's really where you're going to need to know these things when shopping for windows so you don't get screwed. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is frame construction. What I have here is 3 different window samples. Now, when choosing a window for my company to partner with, I chose Polar Seal Windows, and I'm going to go through the details as to why. It's because I see the way the quality of the construction is, and I just want to show that to you so you understand it. So when we talk about the frame, every window out there uses what's called a vinyl extrusion process. Now the problem is when you get into companies that are bigger and they're trying to save money, that's the first thing they're going to do is they're going to skimp on the material they're putting inside the frame. You don't see it, but over time it matters. I made a video a while back and it shows like a window that was in a house where the frame's sagging. In fact, there's another company out there that does like a fiberglass window, and they brag and say, well, you know, it won't sag like a vinyl window. The thing is that you need to know is a good vinyl window won't do that because it's constructed right. So what I have here is I have the Polar Seal window. It's the Royal Seal line. I have a big national competitor window that sells for about the same price, and then I have a local competitor. I'm sure you've heard their advertisements a million times on TV. I actually have one pulled out. This window was from 2015, and it had some issues. We pulled it out of a house and just replaced it. So I've cut that apart, and I want to show you the differences. So the main thing here, when we're talking about the frames, so what I have here is I have a cutaway of the local competitor that I just told you about, and then I have a cutaway of the Royal Seal. So this frame here, when we cut it apart, it had like some styrofoam on the inside. In fact, you can probably kind of see it in there. I'm not sure if it'll come out of there or not, but basically they stuck some styrofoam in there, and I'm sure that's probably part of their sales gimmick. So when I cut this window apart yesterday, what I noticed is it did have some styrofoam in the chamber, but it didn't go all the way around the window. Now, there's no way you'd ever know that without cutting the window apart, and I'm sure you're not going to take the window out and, you know, take a chop saw to it. So just a note, I'm not sure if that's all our windows or if it was just a one-off thing, because part of the window had a good portion of foam in it and the rest didn't. What Polar Seal found, just to eliminate that, is what they've done, and if you look here on this cutaway, is what they found is that if they add more air chambers all the way around this frame, it is going to add more insulation. How does that work? Well, the way that works is like if you wrap a blanket around yourself, the more air you trap around, think about it. If you put like 3 layers of blankets on, you're going to have a lot more insulation around you. You're going to have a lot more resistance to temperature change. That's the same thing when we look at this frame here, is you'll notice it has a lot more chambers in there. So that does a few things. That's going to be just as effective as having foam fill. You don't have to guess whether the thing's foam filled or not because that's how they extrude the plastic. That's the only way it's going to come. And then also because you have more chambers, it's going to add more sound deadening, and it's going to add more resistance to thermal change between hot and cold. The other thing more chambers does is it adds a lot more structural rigidity. So if we're talking about like, you know, a cheaper vinyl framed window, if it doesn't have enough structural integrity to it, it's going to have a lot more propensity, and you can see it here. So if you see how just putting a little bit of pressure on there, I'm able to flex that entire frame because there's nothing holding this structure. And if you look at the cutaway here, there's no actual reinforcement on here. It's a simple thing to do, but it's more vinyl. When they do the extrusion process, they add these 90-degree areas in here, and that adds a lot more structural rigidity to the frame. What does that mean? Well, that means that this frame is not going to sag over time, which means your seals are going to stay nice and tight. You're going to always be able to operate it with one finger because the frame's not out of square and you're not trying to rack the window around, and it's always going to seal up better. The sashes are going to fit better, and you're not going to have to worry about that flexibility. So you don't need to spend the money on the fiberglass, but you can still have a good quality with the vinyl window. Again, that's just something that you wouldn't see unless you actually dissect the window itself. Okay, so next thing I want to talk to you, we talked about the frame construction. Let's just talk about sash construction. Sashes are the part in the window that actually moves up and down and holds the glass. So when we look at this is a local competitor here in Detroit. We pulled this window out, like I said, and the first thing you'll notice if you look, you only have 2 areas of felt. That's your seal to the outside versus, and that goes all the way around the window. And the problem is, if you look in the corners, see how those pieces of felt aren't meeting up? Well, what do you think is going to come through there? And you can actually see the little bit of dirt on here. And imagine these windows are only 7 years old, 8 years old right now. The thing is that's just going to leak air all the way through, and over time you can see the deposits of the dirt put on there as well. So that's a local competitor sash versus when we get into like the national competitor. Now this is, again, these all three come in around the same price point. This does have more felt, so it does have 3 layers around it like the Polar Seal. However, what I did notice on this one is that felt is not as wide. So if you look and then swing over here to the Polar Seal, it's much thicker. And then on this felt here, this is a ultrasonically welded felt, so you get a lot more surface contact. It's a lot wider, and then when you have that, you're gonna have a lot better seal, a lot more surface area for that to contact with the frame. The other thing on both of these sashes that I noticed, both in the national and the local one, is they have an interlocking sash. So the idea here is this grabs onto this other sash up here, and what that does is that's supposed to hold them together. However, again, they cheaped out on the vinyl. It doesn't go all the way across. You're only getting about 50% coverage. And the same thing with this one versus the Polar Seal, where that interlock goes all the way across, and there's a whole nother seal on top of it, where this national brand and the other one don't have that. So when it locks together, now you don't have to worry about, this is called the meeting rail in the middle. This is another area that could leak, and you're gonna eliminate that potential leak by having that. And then as well, if you look over here at the detail, as well as in that corner there, they put another piece of foam in, so you're not gonna have any air leaks coming through that window. That makes a big difference because we live in a cold weather climate, and cold flows from cold to hot, and when you're inside, you're not gonna feel that draft. It's gonna keep you a lot more comfortable. So now that we've talked about frame construction and the sash construction, what I want to touch on right now is the single biggest problem I see with most windows in Michigan. It's seal failure. What is seal failure? It's where you see like the fogging or the streaking on the inside of the glass, or maybe your windows sweat or they're cold to the touch. What it is back in the day, window manufacturers just had a single pane of glass. As energy bills went up in the late 60s, early 70s, they came up with what's called a double pane window. What that is 2 pieces of glass glued around a spacing system, and the idea is the same as like having your frame where you have the chambers on the inside. It's to provide more of an air buffer between you and the outside. A lot of manufacturers put like argon in there, denser gases that keep energy on the inside or the outside. The trouble with metal spacers, and 99% of companies use them, is they expand and contract at a different rate than the glass. So you have 2 pieces of glass sandwiched around a metal spacer. Well, what happens is, as those glass expands and contracts, that metal stays rigid, the seal fails. Once that seal fails, the window's absolutely shot. That's where you lose all thermal capability, and then you get the sweat on the inside of the window, or the fog, or the windows are cold to the touch. The window's absolutely shot at that point. And if you come over here, I'll just show you real quick that this window has it. It's a metal spacing system, and then even the national brand over here has a metal spacer on the inside. Now, what they will tell you is that they have a warm edge technology, and it's going to prevent that from happening. And I'm here to tell you, I've seen it happen plenty of times where that fails, and a lot of times it fails in 5 years. Let me ask you a question. How mad would you be if you had a whole house full of windows, and windows are expensive, and they started having seal failure within the first 5 years? It happens all the time. And the reason why, if you come in here, I've deconstructed this window just to show you. If you look on the inside of this glass, so here's the glass, here's a seal, here's the metal spacer, and then another seal. Well, you can see here where I've deconstructed this, and I know I was a little rough on it, but there's a fail point right there, okay? That's going to happen naturally over time because, like I said, again, the glass is moving at a different rate. The other reason that happens, if you look at this sash here, this is the inside of the window, and then this is the outside of the window. That's where the glazing or the last piece snaps into place to hold that in place. The problem with that is as it rains on the outside of the house, all that water's got nowhere to go, and it sits down there and it starts eating at the seal, further leading to the possibility of seal failure. Now, Polar Seal has done a couple cool things. Not only do they put the glazing on the inside of the window, as you can see here, those are the snap-in pieces, but then they use what's called a super spacer sealing system. So what is super spacer? So instead of using a metal spacing system, what Polar Seal has come up with is they use a super spacer. And if you come in and look at it, it's made of foam. Now that has a couple big benefits as compared to metal. So foam is flexible. It flexes at the same rate when that glass is on there as the glass, guaranteeing you're not going to have any seal failure. The other really neat thing about that, they fill it full of argon. It's got a mylar backing on here. Same thing they make balloons out of that try to trap gas. That's going to keep that argon on the inside of the window. Then they run a butyl seal all the way around, so it's got a double seal on it plus the foam. Everything expands at the same rate. You're never going to have to worry about having fog or that nastiness on the inside of your window or cold windows ever again. That's really cool. The other really neat thing about foam, it's not a conductor. So think about metal. What is it? It's a conductor. It's a conductor of energy. So it's like setting a pop can down on a warm day. So what it is, you know, it sweats when you pick it up, you get all that. That's the same thing that metal's doing on the inside. Foam is not going to do that. It's naturally going to resist temperature changes, actually 100% better than metal. And the other thing, it's 18% more sound deadening, which is really cool when your neighbor's firing up that weed eater at 7 o'clock in the morning. Chances are you're not going to hear it, far better than if you had a metal spacer in your window. So if you think about it, now that you know what you know about spacing system, would you ever want to buy a window with a metal spacer in it again? Probably not, because it's not a matter of if it's going to fail, it's a matter of when. So the next thing I want to touch on really quick is actually the glass. That's what most of the window's made out of. That's where you're losing most of your thermal capability. So the thing is about the national window companies is they have a tendency to go as low as they can with the U factor. That's the resistance to the sun's heat. The problem with that in a northern climate such as ours is when you start blocking that out, we get more cool days than we do hot. And when you start blocking that out, you're actually blocking out the free sun's energy during the winter months. So what Polar Seal, what they've decided to do is they use a hard coat low E. It still has the same coefficient as like an R19 or a 6-inch wall, which is perfect for Michigan, which is really nice because you're going to capture that free heat during the winter, and then you're still going to get that nice hard coat low E to block out most of that sun's heat during the hot summer months, and you're going to stay nice and comfortable in your house. The other thing is when it comes to the glass itself, on every single window, they use a double strength, thicker glass than even on the national brands. So between all of the hardware and between the thicker, heavier glass on this Polar Seal and the thicker, heavier frames, this window actually weighs over 10% more than this one, even though it's 5 inches shorter. And I weighed that out on the scale, which is incredible. So the last thing I want to talk to you about, and the most important thing I want to talk to you about, and the reason that I am sold on Polar Seal as the preferred brand that I install. Now keep in mind, I can install any window out there, and I don't have a contract with them, but I love this window so much, it's because of the service. Think about it. If you ever had an experience where you're trying to get resolved, you have a problem with a company, and you call in and they put you through to like some call center in, I don't know, India or another state or whatever, somebody doesn't care about you, right? That's the worst feeling in the world. The nice thing about Polar Seal is when you call into the factory, they're going to answer the phone. And the cool thing about that is if something ever happened to me where I went out of business, they're still going to cover my warranty. And they cover every single thing on this window, including the seal failure and everything else. So you have a lifetime warranty. It's the best warranty in the industry. So if you ever did have a problem, even if I was out of business at Level Up Improvement, you're still covered. And that warranty transfers one time to the next homeowner, which is really cool because you can build a lot of value back into your home by having an upgrade that, you know, people actually care about. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this video really helped you today because I just wanted to deconstruct these windows and show you like a few things that I know about that make a big difference in having the quality of the window and a window that's going to last for you. If you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos when it comes to home improvement. If you need windows or know someone that needs windows in their house and would like a free estimate, go ahead and call us anytime at 313-287-9525, and we'd be more than happy to come out and give you a completely free, no pressure estimate. Thanks again for watching. I hope you have a great day.